So in the last video, we actually did some of our user tests, and we did 2 user tests. So we had 2 users, we had 1 test each, which itself was comprised of actually 2 tests. Anyway, it's very complicated, but we did 2 user tests, and 1 was successful and 1 wasn't, or was partially successful. So that's cool. And I explained that now, for the IEC 62366 usability compliance, you essentially need to document user needs, especially user needs related to hazards. And best case, you just have user tests for all your user needs. So you keep the list short, 5 to 10 user needs, and then 5 to 10 tests, and you're good. And you need at least five test users. In the US, you need more. And you actually need to have, well, best case test users, which are kind of like part of which fulfill the characteristics of your target population, which you mentioned in your intended use. So for example, in our test depression app here, it should best case be at least people within the same demographic, maybe with depression, maybe not, but they should at least be similar enough. So that's cool. Now, we did this, and this is called summative usability evaluation. So you test your app with these user tests. You have these user tests on a version of your product, which is as close as possible to the final version you want to release. So you do it pretty late in development, obviously. And you kind of do it, best case, you do it once, you succeed, and then you can bring your device to market. So that's cool. So to recap, 5 users, do it once, do it on the final product, do it just before your release. Best case, you pass, and you're good. And that's 80% of the usability engineering work for medical device compliance. Now, today we want to talk about something else in the remaining 20%, which can make your life easier, even though it's kind of optional. And that's the formative usability evaluation. So the formative usability evaluation is literally more or less the same like the summative usability evaluation, but you can do it on earlier versions of your app, like on prototypes, or even on mock-ups or just screenshots. And it doesn't have any sort of hard requirements like the summative evaluation has. So you can do any sort of method. You don't need at least 5 users. It doesn't strictly have to be like a user in your target population. Long story short, you can just do whatever you want. And that's pretty cool, in my opinion, because it actually enables you as a company to do useful things. Who thought that companies would actually do useful things if they are not super over-regulated? So that's what you can do right now. And you can kind of come up with your own ideas here. I'll just show you how to document it, and it's so freestyle. We don't even have a template for this because there is no need to have a template. So in Formwork here, we had our user tests, and I would strongly encourage you only to document your user tests of your summative evaluation in this section in Formwork to keep things clean. Otherwise, things will become extremely messy, because then if you document your formative evaluation stuff and user tests in here, you might have a lot of them, and you might have lots of failures too, because you were doing stuff with early prototypes. Just don't do that. So instead, what is cool is in Formwork, you have this record section, which essentially allows you to save rich text stuff alongside your product, and it also gets versioned, which is cool. So here we just create a new record. And again, this is associated with this version of our product, with version 0.1, which is the first version. And we could just say hey, formative evaluation number 1, okay, with Mr. C. Because we had the people A and B, we already had them in the summative evaluations. Okay, and this is literally, and you just document what you did with that person. And again, it is complete freestyle. And what makes sense, and what I've seen in many cases in startups, is for software, maybe you have a Google Meet call with someone who is very well known in, who's very competent in the field. If you're selling to radiologists, you could have a call with a radiologist who's kind of very knowledgeable in the startup software field. So he can kind of really understand what your product does, and he can give you good feedback on that. And that's generally just a useful thing, right? So you could kind of and then you just document it here. So you could just say hey, we had a call, Google Meet call on, and then some date, today's date, with Mr. C, and he gave us some feedback. And then you could kind of say okay, maybe you showed him some screenshots, screenshot 1, and then the feedback of that person, and then screenshot 2, or whatever. And again, like this is completely up to you. So the method of this was, okay, we had a Google Meet call, we showed screenshots, but again, it is complete freestyle. So you could even like deploy an early development version of your software. Again, if it's software, if it's hardware, you send over a prototype via mail. And the person maybe just sends you an email back with like some feedback. And that's also totally fine. It doesn't have to be synchronous. It doesn't have to be a call. It doesn't have to be in person. It's literally any sort of feedback you get during product development. And again, it doesn't even have to be the target user. It could be like a UI UX person who kind of like just looks at your software and says like, hey, your UX sucks. And that's maybe also good feedback. You take that into account. Could also be a technical person who kind of like criticizes it on a more technical level. So again, this is completely up to you. If you read the standard, you will notice, strictly speaking, it is not a hard requirement to do formative evaluation. Still, I think this is actually one of those very rare instances where regulatory requirements and useful things overlap. So, and it is an easy win for you towards auditors, because if you're a startup, you will probably get some sort of feedback from users along the way, or just any sort of feedback along the way. And then in that case, just document it, call it formative evaluation, and you already have cool stuff to show your auditors. And they will kind of like think like, oh my God, this startup is so user focused and they take usability seriously. And that's also a cool thing to have, because auditors, again, they live in their own world. They tend to be decoupled from reality. And if they see even more documents, then it makes them very happy. So that's cool. So that's formative evaluation. That's how it works. If you have any questions, if I missed anything, leave a comment below. But otherwise, I encourage you to do some of your formative evaluation and just get some of this documentation done. Cool. So in the next video, we'll actually be talking about some missing bits, as we now covered 80% of usability work, which was the summative evaluation in the prior videos. Now we covered a big chunk of the remaining 20%, which was formative evaluation. And now we just have a few like bureaucratic documentation exercises, which we need to do in the end to wrap things up. So that's it. Stay tuned for the next video. And in the meantime, good luck with your formative evaluation.